I'm back. Back again. Getting a little too much sun, maybe. What's going on in the world today? Weird, why is my brain gone out of blank? I had a whole bunch of shit I was going to share. Damn it. No, well. What was I going to share? Damn it, I had some good shit I was going to drop on you guys. I'm sure it'll come back. I don't know what happens. Sometimes, like I'm always talking to myself, obviously. And then I think, oh yeah, I'm going to bring that up. Or, oh yeah, I'm going to see if anybody knows. Oh yeah. And then dumbass, I don't write it down, and I come down and sit down in front of this stupid camera, and then all of a sudden I go, huh? Anyway. Sarah, for all of you, you get an email. Sarah just told me that she's got no problem organizing all of the people, all of the notes that I've marked as look into. So as soon as we get back, it's on like Donkey Kong. She is going to organize, contact all of the people out there who I feel would be very helpful to have a conversation with in person on here to share with all of you. So when you get an email, it'll be from Sarah. I'm going to drop that one. Fishing. A lot of people are inquiring about fishing. And I don't use my fish guiding it's not my sole gig. And I don't want to overdo it, I don't want to underdo it, I don't want to tell somebody I'm doing it and then not do it, etc., etc. So that's why it takes so long to agree to booking people. So, if you want to, you can start getting in that line. It's going to be first come, first serve at bookit@howtohunt.com. And when we get back, so I'll get on that. I'll guide a handful of days again this summer. Just not sure which ones yet. Going to drop that on you. I also emailed all of the website developers. I emailed you all back the same email. I'd imagine everybody's in bed right now. What time is it? What day is it? What time is it? It is January 26th, 2:55 p.m. So it's actually for all you at home in North America on the West Coast, it's 11:55 p.m. And it's yesterday for me. Crazy, right? Now I got a whole pile of emails. A lot. Now where should I start? I got so many. Shit. I also had something emailed to me. It was a link to an older video conversation interview with a native elder. Now where is that? I was thinking maybe I wouldn't mind sharing. I started to listen to it earlier. I got nothing to balance the phone on, but I can put the phone right by the camera so it picks it up. It'll crank up the volume. Let's listen to it. All right.
Yes, they are.
6 minutes.
They've never been known to harm.
Hold on.
Being or anything else.
Let me rewind that. Damn it, come on. Where's the rewind button?
Understand they're vegetarians?
Yes, they are. They've never been known to harm or eat a human being or anything else in there. That doesn't mean that they won't defend themselves and stuff, or that they don't get angry, but basically they're very peaceful people, and they are our ancestors. There's also some misunderstanding. I always talk in terms of Sasquatch and Yei, and there's actually two different kinds of Yei you find here in the desert, in the river valleys and the swamps and things. The Sasquatch are primarily the high mountain people and stuff, and they're much larger than the Yei. When I went down to Australia, it was really funny because I asked Aboriginal people down there, I says, do you have the equivalent to our Sasquatch and Yei? And they said, oh yeah, we do. And they laughed, and they said, the white people call them Yowies. And I said, why do they call them Yowies? And they said, well, because every time they see one, they go, Yowie! They have another name altogether for them. And they have very personal relationships with those. And sadly, the ones that they have down there are very old now, very ancient, and not regenerating themselves, not repropagating themselves.
How old do you think that they
we know they live to be at least 900 years old.
Wow. Terrific genes.
I would guess, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, though, that we say that they took away from us. when we were biogenetically re-engineered. And if you go back and look, for example, in the Bible or some of the old ancient texts, you'll see that a lot of the old people lived for long periods of time.
Methuselah, sure.
Yeah.
A lot of them. But you said to me they left something behind. The little stone.
For certain people, oftentimes they will leave a little sort of a gemstone behind. And they can be blue, but most of the time they're red. And we call them memory stones. And what we say is that they attune that stone to your own psyche, to your own intellect. And when the right time comes, that stone will key a memory or something that they've told you or something that you already know in you. And so a lot of people, that have been given these, and they're very rare. And if anybody gets one, you should treasure it, because you have something very, very special there in your hand. I wear one, but I wear it as part of my medicine pouches and things. And it's a little larger than most of them, but when you showed me that one today, I knew immediately what it was. And as I picked it up first thing and held it, and I said, well, this is key for the individual, that it was given to.
Yes, that was from a good friend of mine who's going to be on the next show on the 21st of March. And his name is Kiwani. And he's going to talk about his episodes with the Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And he gets the beads. He's had 5 beads in red, and you told me you had several.
Yeah. Well, we actually have a song. We say we can sing them up. And some of my apprentices, sometimes I use the Sasquatch. I teach my apprentices how to see them. Sasquatch, we say, are what we say they mind speak. You call it telepathy. And that's their defense mechanism. Like, they're so strong with it. Like, you can be walking down through the woods and one can be standing there and you can look at him and he can make you think that he's a tree. He can make you think that he's a rock or a boulder and things. And one of the ways that I teach my apprentices to look for them, I remember one group in particular, I told them, I said, look out there at all those trees out there. And they looked out there and they said, yes, grandfather, so what? And I said, one of them's a Sasquatch. And of course right away it was like, which one? And I said, well, what you need to do, I said, is you need to count the trees. And so they got their pencil and papers out and they counted the trees and everything, and stuff, and made their little maps and stuff. And then, the next day eventually they went out and was able to look, and they were able to find which tree was not there then, and then they knew that was the one that was the Sasquatch. Now once you learn how to look for them and see them, then you can see through that facade. But you have to be adept enough, and you have to be trained well enough, and you have to be sensitive enough to where that when you look out there, you actually look through that and things.
Are they shape changers, or just change your mind to make the image?
They're not shapeshifters in the traditional sense that most people think of shapeshifters. For example, how the Navajo think about their Yenagloshi, or what you would call the werewolf. They're loping people, they're skinwalkers, but you're actually really werewolves. And interesting thing about that, when you look at it, some people, we always think of us turning into animals, and very, very rarely do we really stop and think. We're so egocentric, that animals often can turn into human beings, and one of our own legends, the legend of the white buffalo calf woman, is a legend who brought us our pipes and things, is a legend of an animal turning into a human being, giving us something, teaching us something, and then turning back into an animal and going away, And so a lot of times whenever things happen, these kinds of things, creatures, if you will, that come and stuff, we're looking for all these other explanations, and the explanation's really simple. It's right here, in our own backyard.
There you go. Interesting, huh? And there is...
I understand they're vegetarians.
Yes, they are. They've never...
There's no name for this fella here. The Morrow? The Morrow Chronicles? Looks older. Quite older. Interesting, right? How about that tree? How about that? You know, I don't know how many times I've thought about that when I'm on the Pacific Coast Mountains here. And I've never done it. I spent a lot of time in that big timber looking around, hunting black-tailed deer by myself. Big, mature fir trees and cedars all over the place, hemlock and shit, spruce. And I'm like, I wonder what would happen, you know, if I just sat here where I can see for 100 yards in that big timber. I wonder what would happen if I just sat here with binoculars and intently stared at every single tree I could see. I used to think that quite a few times, but I never actually did it. But what an interesting remark this elder native man shared right there, don't you think? I've never heard that shared here ever. To go and look at the forest.
Understand the vegetarians?
Yes.
Sorry.
They've never been
Stop
known
it.
to harm
To look.
or eat a human being or anything else.
Come on. If you were to go where you think something's going on and look at all the trees, write them down, take a photo, count them, take a photo maybe. That'd be interesting too. How many people have gone out and photographed the timber? I don't know if that would even work. Because you know what? I'm guessing right now what we've learned here from all of everybody. If you were to stare at the timberline with your bare eye, do a count of the trees, write down on a piece of paper the number of trees, the size, to help you identify them the next time you came out, you know, immature, mature, clusters, whatever. Just accurately take a look and see all those trees, maybe some boulders. Make a note of it. And like he just mentioned, come down and check it again another time. That could be spooky, right? That could be some spooky results, but I'll bet you if you were to take a photograph or a video of the tree line, from what we know, I'll bet you that would not be effective because I think that the video camera, the electronics won't pick up that tree that's present for our eyeballs. Possibly, maybe. Interesting though, right? Who's going to do it? Our sleuth team? Who's going to start doing that? I'll bet you a lot. Go out there to that special place that you got, or where you feel uncomfortable, take a look at all those trees, take your time, study them, mark them down how many, and then come back and take a look again. Imagine if you went back and there's like blatantly 4 trees missing. That'd be insanely crazy and interesting and exciting and kind of creepy all in one, right? I might try that. Maybe. So who do we got? Oh, I got a lot. This email is titled, A Difficult and Detailed Encounter. Hi Steve, I'm about to share 2 separate but related stories, same year, same area. The first story is short and simple. It probably could be written off on its own, but it complements and reinforces the second story. Here's the part where I explain my credentials. I'll not try to impress you with my outdoor expertise. I just really enjoy hiking and fishing. I do it whenever my schedule allows. However, I have 14 years experience in law enforcement. I've seen and done plenty. I am confident in my ability to protect myself and others. I'm one of the few who do not have the typical fight or flight response. I'm able to keep my cool in dangerous situations, keep an eye on the larger picture, no tunnel vision, and act tactily. I also have an uncanny knack for discovering the truth, especially when the details are hidden. I have training in investigative interviewing and advanced interrogation. I bring this up not to impress you, but to let you know why I have included so many details that do not seem necessary. The truth of the matter can often be discovered by studying details that do not seem relevant at the time. And with that said, here we go. Sounds somewhat familiar, but it's marked as not read. But I think we've had a few law enforcement officers chime into the same delivery, right? So let's get into it. Encounter number 1. April of 2019, Northern Idaho. I was itching to get outdoors after winter, and there are some old railroad tracks that lead out of town. The tracks have not been used in decades. I decided to take a day pack and see what was out there. The tracks led through the wilderness from the small town I live in to a small logging community about 24 miles away. The tracks follow a creek for the entire distance. I hiked about 6 miles out and decided to stop for lunch before heading back. I saw a beautiful spot covered in very large boulders along the creek about 100 yards from the tracks. It was very steep and not easy access, but worth the effort to climb down. I found myself in a 10-foot by 5-foot area surrounded on 3 sides by 7 to 8-foot boulders. I sat down on a rock, resting my back against one of the boulders and facing the direction I had just come from. While putting a hand into my pack to retrieve my lunch items, a rock about the size of my fist struck the boulder I was resting against about 2 feet to the right of my head. I didn't think much of it, assuming a rock dislodged from the steep area I had climbed down. And about 1 minute later, while I was eating, a second rock hit the same exact spot as the first. My mindset immediately changed as I realized the improbability of 2 rocks of equal size dislodging 1 minute apart and striking in the exact same spot. I also realized that the rocks had to be thrown over the boulder that was 5 feet in front of me. I was not alarmed and assumed someone was having a good chuckle at my expense. I casually removed my pistol from its holster and made a show of checking it over before placing it on top of the pack in front of me. I finished my lunch with no further incident and began the ascent back up the rocks. About 20 feet into the ascent, I stopped to inspect what seemed to be a large and deep footprint. I'm not a tracker, but it seemed to be the shape of a human footprint. I removed most of the pine needles and took a picture with my foot next to it, thinking to show my 13-year-old son who's crazy about such things. The print looks to be about 18 inches long. I returned home with no further incident. Encounter number 2, August 2019, Northern Idaho. And this encounter changed me forever. I used to enjoy hiking and camping alone. It brought me peace of solitude. I'll never be able to stay in the woods alone again. I will also never return to this particular area. I once again took to the railroad tracks, and this time I decided to hike further in and stay the night before returning. I had a great day and made 12 miles by early afternoon. I found a nice looking little meadow with a small patch of trees towards the middle. The creek wrapped around the meadow, making a pleasant sound, and I set up camp in the patch of trees and hung my new hammock I'd been wanting to try out. I remember thinking that whatever animals had been bedded down there would be disappointed when they saw me there. The vegetation was flattened already where I set up, and I grabbed my fishing gear and found a nice pool in the creek. I spent a couple hours there and reeled in a few small rainbow trout. I usually would have been catching dinner, but that night I didn't want to eat rainbow trout, so I let them all go. I returned to camp and decided to try out my new hammock. I didn't check the time, but I think it would have been around 5 p.m. when I climbed into the hammock. I was enjoying the motion and the shade from the trees, and don't remember falling asleep. My eyes suddenly sprang open. It was evening time and rapidly approaching dark. Something was wrong. It was deathly quiet with only the sound of the creek to be heard. I got out of the hammock, looked around, and was just thinking of starting a fire for the night when something really strange happened. A thought not my own was forced into me. It wasn't like hearing a voice, but I understood the meaning perfectly. Quote, "You're not supposed to be here," end quote. I was immediately filled with fear and fought the urge to panic. And this was a feeling that was new to me. I've never been affected this way. I have been in dozens of violent interactions over the years and have never experienced anything that made me have to fight the urge to panic. I looked around carefully, weighed my options, and decided on a course of action that has helped me de-escalate dangerous situations in the past. I decided that I had trespassed and something or someone was extremely angry with me. I was 12 miles away from help in either direction, and my only option was to be polite and courteous. I spoke aloud saying, "Okay, I'm leaving." I immediately packed everything up. I carefully inspected the camp, ensuring everything was as close as I could get to how it looked when I arrived. And the entire time I felt as though someone was right behind me, watching my every move. I made my way back to the tracks with darkness closing in around me. I started back the way I came. and I had only taken a few steps when I heard the unmistakable sound of a rattlesnake behind me. I had stepped right over it. And now I realized that running was not even an option. Snakes like to soak up the heat from the tracks in the evening, and I would for sure run into more of them. Yeah, sheep hunting on the Fraser River, a bunch of buddies of mine ran into tons of rattlesnakes on the railroad tracks. Another 50 feet or so, and I found another rattlesnake directly in front of me. And I had an intense feeling of being followed, and yet I had to pay attention to what was in front of me rather than looking behind me. No doubt. The snake was not reacting to me, and I became annoyed that these rattlesnakes were not giving me any warnings as I approached them. I picked up a small pebble and tossed it next to the snake. It coiled and rattled at me. And as I stepped around it, I mockingly thanked it for the warning. I'm not sure how I came to the conclusion, but I was sure there were two beings following me, one on each side. I felt like I was being escorted. That'd be creepier than shit. I continued into the darkness, encountering two more rattlesnakes along the way. Same thing, no warning as I approached. I continued to be escorted. I wondered if I would be able to defend myself if it came to it. I had a single action .357 revolver, 12 bullets and a knife, and I felt it wasn't enough. I was in real trouble. The intensity of the fear did not subside. I'd gone about 4 miles when I came to a broken ridge, and there are several bridges on this length of track, and some of them broken or collapsed. This one was collapsed in the middle and could not be crossed. I had bypassed it initially by leaving the tracks into the woods, crossing through about 30 feet of water, back into the woods, and onto the tracks on the other side. I was trapped. Realization gripped me. I was done. There was no way I was going into the woods. I walked out onto the bridge and went as far as I could before the collapsed section. I was about 25 feet above the water and had decent visibility of my surroundings. If something walked or climbed on the bridge, I would feel it. If something walked in the water, I might hear it. I turned off my flashlight to conserve the batteries in case I needed it again. I stood for a long time feeling defeated and watching the trees in all directions. Then suddenly, and I mean suddenly, like a light switch, the feeling of intense fear was immediately replaced by a sense of calm. Another thought was forced into me. Stay here. I felt calm, but I was not trusting of my own feelings, and something was off. I still had the feeling that I was being watched. I removed my pack and tried to get somewhat comfortable, but I was exhausted. I sat for hours in the dark. My mind was trying to work out what just happened. I began to doubt myself. Was I going crazy? I decided that maybe nothing was going on, and I was just scared for no reason. I decided I would never speak of it to anyone. My eyes closed at some point, and I nodded off. I was immediately woken up by two distinct knocking sounds coming from my left as I was facing the direction I had just come from. It sounded like wood hitting wood. It was not overly loud, and it was extremely close by. At some point, I nodded off again. I was once again immediately woken up by two knocks, seemingly from the same location as the first two. The feeling of calm was present throughout this time, and I still did not trust it. A third time I nodded off, but this time I was woken up by the sound of a very large, heavy object landing in the water. I immediately looked in the direction of the sound, and I saw the location of impact was about 15 feet from the shore, 13 feet from the tree line, and 20 feet from the bridge. It sounded like a much bigger rock than I could ever pick up, and had been thrown into the water, probably from at least 30 feet away. It may sound strange, but this did not frighten me. I still had a sense of calm. It's hard to find the right words to explain, but I felt like I was being harassed by a teenager. And like I said about the first encounter, I felt like someone was having a good laugh at my expense. I waited out the rest of the night without further incident and did not move from my spot until 10 a.m. I wanted to be sure I had full light, no shadows for the 8-mile walk home. Then I walked home without incident. I have not and will not return to that location. Please feel free to share my please feel free to share my story I feel it's as important for other people to hear it and get validation as it is for me to get it off my chest. However, please don't use my name. I don't want the attention. And P.S. again, I didn't get too specific on the location because I didn't want anyone to figure it out and have a bunch of weird people going there. I will, however, give it to you if you ask. Thank you. I'm good, my man. I'm good. I know where they live. I'm good. And I appreciate that email big time. Your bravery coming forward, man. And I got you back. I'm going to share your name. Railroad tracks, I can relate to that. There's a couple places in the Sea to Sky area of British Columbia where I deer hunt. And where I have numerous times I've hiked, I used to put on waders, and I'd hike across the river in hip waders in pitch black. Stupid as shit by myself then, but I'm still alive. I made it. But anyways, and I would hike these. This old railway through the timber in the dark to get to where I wanted to hunt, and then I would hang a right and climb straight up into that big timber. And there's one stretch there, probably about 500, 600 yards of stretch where it just creeped the shit out of me. Not overly, but it reminded me of the time when I was a kid when I kept having to go up over that pass to get to where I was hunting in the dark. And I would dread going that way, and that was leading up to my sighting, right? But I never had that extreme feeling of dread having to go through that section of train tracks, but it did creep me out. So having all that additional happen to you on the train tracks, I can relate. I don't envy that myself, but I can relate using those old tracks and having feelings. And there you go. Another member of the club. Here's another one. I had another experience 17 years later. Please read this and maybe the email before. All right, well, we're getting you this one right now. I sent an email to you explaining my first experience and will reflect on it during this email. I was a Special Forces trainee after INDOC, bracket, balls, 3-03 end bracket, for a year and a half while I was working my way through the pipeline. I was sent to survival school / POW camp in Spokane, Washington. After a 3-week-long training in the classroom, we were pretty much set loose in the mountains along the Washington-Idaho border. In my last email, it speaks of this in more detail. In short, I saw a large hairy leg, lower thigh down, recede into the thicket behind my buddy I was paired with, less than 40 yards behind him. If I were to estimate his size, the knee would have come up to about my waist. I'm 6'1", and later that night after we made it to the checkpoint and camp, there was a deep bellowing howl coming from the mountain we had just hiked in from. We heard it several times, and this was my first experience. This past weekend, we got back from Colorado. We spent 9 days off-roading Jeep trails and sleeping in the national forests in the Telluride and Ouray area. Tellurid and Ouray area. The first camp was to be near our elk camp. I wanted to show my wife where it was, our setup, and hopefully glass a few out to see where they were located before season. This area is more than remote. It is approximately 2 hours from any ranch and 3 hours from Telluride. Not too many people besides hunters go into that area, and that is only during season. And when we arrived, we were the only ones on the mountain besides a couple at the base of the mountain who looked as if they were going to horseback ride the fire trail nearly 2,000 feet below us and about 45 minutes down the Jeep trail from our camp. We made good time coming up from Texas. Got in and up the mountain by about 11 a.m. on August 9th, 2020. We were happy to be out of the truck and quickly made camp. We even had time for a nap in the hammocks and a short hike down the trail toward our elk camp, only making it about a mile before my wife's toe started bothering her, and I didn't want to push her. She broke it 8 days before the trip. 8 days? Broken toe 8 days before the trip. Hey, honey, I'm taking you hiking. Oh boy, that night, the first night in the woods, around midnight, 1 a.m., I heard a howl. And 3 to 5 minutes later, it did it again. I got closer. It did it a total of 8 times, each time getting closer. It was coming down the trail we had hiked earlier that day. And on the second or third to last howl, I woke up with my wife. She can sleep through a tornado, and actually has. She heard it and said she thought it might be one of the cows we saw, as ranchers let their cattle out on public land to graze in the summers. I told her that that was not a cow or a bear or anything that I've heard in the wild. The only thing I could make a reference to a noise like that was the only thing I could make a reference to a noise like that was the howl I heard in survival school 17 years earlier. Except this is different. It was a howl that went into a low-frequency growl. It was nothing I've ever heard, and the last one was approximately 200 yards away. And it was booming. After the last howl, it stopped. I laid listening intently. Some time went by, and I fell asleep. And it was a rough 17-hour drive up with only a 45-minute nap in Roswell, New Mexico, and I was exhausted. I was woken by the sound of sniffing and deep breathing outside the tent on my side. I'm guessing about an hour and a half after the last howl. Our choice of overland sleeping is a tent which goes in the bed of the truck. I'll send a picture. Please blur out my face. I have a 2019 Ram 2500 with 4x4 off-road package, and when the tent is in the back, the top of the tent is nearly 8 feet off the ground. I got a buddy of mine who came hunting with me, and he had one of those things. It was one of those racks in the back of his truck. And I just laughed and went, "Oh, were you serving yourself up on a platter?" Just to fuck with him. Sorry, just to screw with him before bedtime, right? Because I'm a dick that way. This thing seemed to be sniffing and breathing heavily, almost on top of me. Its mouth would have been near the top of the tent window. We had the rain fly on since it got cold at night, and there is always a chance of rain in August around Colorado. I grabbed my pistol next to me and tapped my wife to wake her. I whispered, "Do you hear that?" She said she hears something, but being groggy didn't know what it was. I told her it was breathing and big. I've never felt so vulnerable or defenseless in the woods with a gun in my hand in my life. We listened for a while. It felt like 10 minutes as it pulled away from the truck. A couple minutes later, the passenger rear door handle was pulled and snapped closed. Be a little unnerving, wouldn't it? The truck was locked and the alarm came on. Now that'd be really creepy. I have an air horn, so it was loud to say the least. Holy shit, no doubt. The horn covered up any noise of the thing outside the tent. I frantically looked for my keys to turn the alarm off, and I found them, but for some reason, it wouldn't turn off the alarm. Probably from panicking. My wife asked me, what should we do? I said we needed to hope this thing was scared off so we can turn the alarm off first, and then we need to turn on the truck, stoke the fire, and turn on the LED lights we had to make the campsite seem alive. You got air horns going. I think you got the deal going there. You got it covered. Air horns. Can you imagine that in the middle of the night in the forest? I was hoping by doing that, most wild things would keep a distance. We emerged from our tent. I unlocked the door with the fob. But when I was inside, the dash said the fob was not recognizable. And this is really strange. I'm not sure is one and the same or not. I had to get out of the truck and take the key out of the fob to silence the alarm through the door handle, and finally the truck recognized my fob and started. We let the truck run for approximately an hour, sat by the fire with every light we had pointing out into the woods around us. We sat until exhaustion took over, and we were forced to put a couple more logs on the fire and retreat to bed. It was about 4 a.m. at that point. I wouldn't have turned the motor on myself because I like to hear shit. You make that kind of noise, whatever's around you owns your ass completely, right? When all you have is your ears left in the dark. We went to sleep and woke up with no other incidents. We both ate breakfast, quiet. I think we were trying to process what happened. And after a quiet meal, my wife asked what I thought it was. And I told her, honestly, I don't know. But nothing I've ever heard in the woods sounded like that, except when I was in training in Washington State. And nothing I know of in these woods stands over 7 feet tall. She kept insisting it was a cow or a bear. I checked the truck. It was filthy with mud and dust coming into camp. The door handles were clean from us getting stuff in and out of the truck, and there were no abnormal prints anywhere. I would assume a bear would have needed to brace itself against the truck. We hiked that trail again after the morning nap. We got further down the trail. We made it almost to the 4th clearing before our elk camp, and there's a very steep valley you have to cross that my wife didn't feel comfortable doing with her injured foot. So with that, and what looked like thunderheads forming, we turned back. We just got back to camp, and it was lunchtime. And right after I made lunch, it began to rain. It wasn't a lot, but enough for us to get into the tent and take another nap. Catching up on the sleep was needed. And after we woke, and the rain cleared, we hiked up the Jeep trail we came in on for a while, coming back right before dinner. My wife helped calm my nerves, and I think her downplaying the incident helped me to rationalize it to be anything else besides my first, second, and third thought of it being Bigfoot. We got back to camp and made dinner. And after dinner, we were having a mug of wine and trying to relax before nightfall. And about an hour and a half before sunset, the howls returned. This time it was below us, about 150 yards along the tree line. I got out my binocs and glassed where we were hearing this thing, and I couldn't see anything. There were too many dark shadows, and anything could have been hidden out of sight. And it was loud. My hairs are standing on end as I'm typing this. It was so loud, the noise almost reverberated in my chest. Before my wife could finish the sentence, "What do you think we should do?" I started throwing everything in the back of the truck with the tent still erect. And we drove as fast as we could down the mountain Jeep trail and away from that area. We drove down, splitting the distance between us and the couple with the horses. We got to a large meadow, and the rule of thumb is you aren't supposed to drive anywhere that hasn't already been driven on or camped on. That went out the window, and I felt this was a safety issue, so I opted to park in the middle of the field in the wide open. My thoughts were, wild things don't want to be caught out in the open. We got there just as the sun was setting and half-assed made camp again. And as we were sitting on the tailgate and whispering about what happened and trying to calm down by looking at the open sky and stars overhead, we heard a few more howls coming from the direction we just came from. Thankful to have moved, we turned on all the lights we had around us again and went to sleep. We woke up with no other instances. My wife, a week later, doesn't believe anything unless she sees it, and still has been grappling with the fact she didn't know what the sounds were, and the experience was extremely scary for the both of us. We're both pretty experienced hunters and go out hunting and camping often. I'm more a believer now than ever, and the experience had me ask my hunting buddies that I elk hunt in that area with about the situation. I called my best friend first and asked what was the thing he started to talk to me about last hunt, and his brother shot him a look and told him to keep quiet about. He said when he packed his first bag of meat from the elk he shot on the 3rd day, him and his brother saw a huge footprint. He put his foot next to it, and if he guessed, it would have been at least a size 17, and he wears a size 13 boot, and it made his foot look small. This thing still recording? Is it in focus? Probably not. Doesn't matter anyway, does it? His brother shot him a look and told him to be quiet about it. He said when he packed his first bag of meat from the elk he shot on the 3rd day, him and his brother saw a huge footprint. He put his foot next to it, and if he guessed, it would have been at least size 17. And he wears a size 13 boot, and it made his foot look small. He also went on to say it was 1 foot in a small grassy patch. It left an imprint where his foot didn't. even with an extra 100 pounds of meat on his back, so he knew it had to be heavy. It snowed that evening and night, and we couldn't find the spot again. And earlier that week, we did have a bear get into camp and take off with one of my meat bags. We didn't hang it quite high enough, I guess. So the following night, while my buddy and his brother were coming back with their first load of meat, we took our loads to the truck and hung the rest higher on another pole, nearly 17 feet off the ground. And after my friends returned, we hung their meat on that pole as well. The next morning, one of the bags in the middle was tampered with. That's to say it lightly. It looked as if something used the cut log we used nearby to stand on and pull the corner of the bag, stretching it. It was slightly torn, but didn't give. Whatever it was that did that was tall. We had to use the log, and one of us pushed with everything we had, while another person pulled on the string to hike it up as high as possible, approximately 14 feet up. The person standing on the stump with hands up could touch the bag when tied off. After those conversations I had with my friends, we decided we would still go hunt there the next season, since we already have the points and are a shoo-in to be selected. But we will probably take an extra person to help us man camp, take extra rifle each, and more rounds, probably AR-10s, and try to set up either a more secure perimeter or try to set IR cameras around camp and on the meat bags. God willing, we get shots on the group of elk again. It was more than freaky, and I feel this definitely proves there's something in those woods that is bigger and badder than any known animal in the state that I know of. When I got home, I researched the largest black bear that was shot in Colorado, and it was a 705-pound dude that stood about 6 foot tall. The largest black bear I saw taken in the lower 48 was one in Maine that was over 1,100 pounds and stood about 7 feet tall. I set up the tent when I got home, and the top of the window is approximately 7'4", and the top of the tent is 7'6". The top of the window, 7'4", top of the tent, 7'6". That's where I heard the mouth. And again, whatever it was big. Thanks for your time reading my story. Okay, man, gotcha. There's the truck. And cut out your face. Let's see if I can even get you out of here. I'll have to screenshot it. Give me a second, you guys. Hold on a minute. It's just a picture of a tent in the box of a truck. But it'll give you an idea how tall this thing was, right? Alright, hold on a minute. Save my photos. Where is it? There it is. I cut them out. And here you go. There's the pickup on the tent. Mouth level. Top of the tent. And we all know that wasn't a black bear. Wasn't a bear. Creepy. I don't like those tents. I don't like hammocks. I don't like tents. I don't like being vulnerable. I mean, let's face it. When you're in the woods, especially when you're in the middle of nowhere, which I don't know how many times I've done it, but when I go to sleep in the woods, it's almost like you're giving it up. You know what I mean? When you go to sleep on the ground by yourself or with somebody else, doesn't matter. You're basically, as a human being, you're offering it up. It's like, well, here we go. Hopefully wake up tomorrow morning to another day, right? And I sleep like a brick, but I always have that thought in my mind when crawling into that sleeping bag on the ground, in a tent, whatever. It's like, well, I picked my spot as best I could. Hopefully nothing happens. Then you go to sleep, right? And then you wake up in the morning. All right, game on. That's how vulnerable we are, right? Unless you can just, if you just enhance our sixth sense to the max, you know what I mean? That it just wakes you up before something gets within 200 yards of you. Would that be great? Like some other beings that we know? There you go. Let me read this next one. This is titled, appreciate that share, man. And keep me updated. You have anything else happen that you want to share, get it to me, all right? Black Government and Sasquatch. Here we go. Hello, Steve. I bumped into your channel about a year ago and I follow it closely ever since then. And while you've been on the right track all along with your main subject matter, Sasquatch, excuse me, you are ever so right when you mention the government cover-up is all about money and greed. Yeah, maybe money, greed, but yeah, power, for sure. Yeah, money, greed, power, same shit, right? Spiritual too, though, right? I think there's a big spiritual connection going on. These are real creatures, and it's so damn frustrating that more people will not open their eyes to the paranormal and think out of the box. Nah, don't matter. The problem with the majority of people is that they have been conditioned from the day they were born, then through childhood and the adult phase, to believe only what they have been taught to believe, with the norms of society and the lying bastards in the government. Agreed. I'm now 60 years old and retired, and having my own Sasquatch experience when I was 12 years old convinced me that these creatures are not only real, but they have a bit of paranormal anomalies. I've done a lot of research over the last 20 years concerning the subject, along with extraterrestrial technology that the government has had for over 50 years. The government agency is known as what I and many others call the Black Government. The Black Government has a budget of $800 billion a year and can pull funds whenever they want without being questioned by anyone. They can not only pull funds, but they can also pull funds from any funds that are payable by tax dollars. Is that effed up or what? In the United States government, there are 37 levels of security, and the president is only ranked at 23. So there are 14 levels of security above the presidency. The higher levels are mainly military-oriented, but here's the catch. They contract out to private parties for the research and marketing of reverse-engineered extraterrestrial products that eventually become for sale to the public and private enterprise. One of the biggest players in the game is J.P. Morgan, along with two other financial institutions with a net worth of $26 trillion. They make billions, if not trillions of dollars each year from these products, such as fiber optics and many, many other products. Yes, it's all about greed and money. Of course, the government knows about the existence of Sasquatch. If they haven't made any money on it yet, they soon will. Are they ever going to let the public know the existence of Sasquatch? Only time will tell, and it takes people like you, Steve, to get that knowledge to the people. The more people to share their experiences, there's going to be more of a chance they will eventually have to come clean. Always a pleasure to watch your channel. Keep giving it hell on wheels. I'm a tough nut to crack, but I feel very comfortable sharing this information with you. Thanks, Steve. You're the man. Feel free to give me a call anytime. All right. Did you say to use your? Did you even say I could share this? Didn't say not to. All right. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm at the mindset of my mindset currently is I don't need shit from the government. I need nothing from them. Nothing. I don't need acknowledgement of nothing except that they're criminals. They get acknowledged that, which they do. I need nothing from them. Nothing. Everything I need is right here with all of you, the people. It's everything I need is right there. Kick them to the curb. Kick them to the curb. We have to kick that thought of we need them. I wish I could somehow figure out and master it to convince the world to kick the sons of bitches to the curb. They have nothing you need. Nothing. Except the money they stole from you. That's about it. The rights they stole from you. That's about it. But I'll bite my lip. I'll bite my lip. What do we got here? We got cougars, question mark. Knock before growl, question mark. Hello. I don't know what to make of what happened when I was hiking in Manning Park in May of 2019. I know what it feels like to be watched by a mother bear with cubs before I actually saw or smelt them. And what a bear smells like out of hibernation when I've been too close to them. I know what it feels like to be watched by a cougar at night before seeing the animal. But I didn't feel or smell anything ahead of time during this particular hike. I spent 48 hours hiking in Manning Park, roughly a 24-kilometer hike without seeing another human being all day. Around 2 hours into the hike, I actually turned around on the trail because I thought there was someone behind me. I had that feeling in the back of my neck and between my shoulders that someone was right behind me. There was nothing there when I turned around. And this happened a second time about 4 minutes later. Still nothing when I turned around. Fast forward 6 hours. I'm about an hour or so away from the trailhead on my way back when I sat down on a log to have a break. I didn't feel anything around me. I heard a knock on wood. Like a kiln-dried wood sounding knock right behind me. And a slow, drawn-out, low register growl. That's a shitty combination. I sat still for a couple of seconds and then slowly stood up and slowly turned around to look behind me and up the mountainside, and nothing. My brain wasn't registering what animal it was, but I know that any growl is a warning. I continued on the trail. About 5 minutes later, I stopped to look out over the lake. I had my arms fully extended out of my sides, grasping my hiking poles as I stood still. I heard another knock and another slow, drawn-out, low-register growl right behind me again. So I slowly turned around, and nothing in the treetops, nothing on the ground, when I was looking up the mountainside. I made myself as big as possible because this time I felt a little fear in my stomach. So I started talking out loud, banging on my poles, my hiking poles together to make sounds. Picked up some rocks to put in my pockets and continued down the trail at a quicker pace. And about 4 to 5 minutes down the trail, I heard a bunch of rocks and logs falling down the mountainside from almost right above where I was. I thought that whatever it was lost its footing and started a bit of a landslide from the rocks and logs. And that's when I realized that I was being stalked by something. So I started whistling and talking and making tons of noise. The slight breeze was coming toward me and whatever was behind me, so I couldn't smell it. But what confused me the most about this was the wood knock before the growl. When I tried to figure out what kind of growl it was, through listening to YouTube videos, the closest growl sound I could find was a cougar. But none of the videos had a cougar growl that sounded super close to what I heard with a wood knock preceding the growl. The best description of the growl is the creaking sound a door makes when you open it super slow, like a long, drawn-out creak. Well, imagine that, in a low-register growl, but just that ends in a little bit higher pitch than what it started. Yeah, it's kind of weird, eh? A low growl ending higher. Usually it's the other way around, right? Quite honestly, I went straight to Cabela's and bought bear spray. I've hiked in BC for decades and never once brought a self-defense weapon on a hike. And I've come face to face on a trail with a mother bear and cub, so small they would have fit into my purse. And I just talked to the bear in my head, slowed my breathing and heartbeat down, and lived to see another day after the bear went to the tree where her cub scrambled up. That would have been a black bear. I've come face to face with a wolf who was more scared of me and took off. Lots of black bear, deer, elk, moose encounters while hiking, and nothing I wasn't able to be smart about myself. On one of your future videos, could you talk about cougar encounters, please? Do they smack their tails against wood before they growl? No. I've Googled that question and asked friends who hunt, friends who work in the backcountry settings, and they don't have an answer for a wood knock before a growl. It must have been a cougar that was stalking me, but the wood knock before the growl is throwing me off and being able to identify correctly what it was, so I can be properly prepared to go back and hike Manning Park next spring. I haven't had a cougar encounter during a hike before, so I'm not familiar with their sounds or smell. I watch your videos to learn from when I'm out hiking backcountry and for when my friend's husband decides to finally take us hunting with him. You're a good teacher. Thank you for considering the request about cougars and trying to figure out the knock before the growl. Please don't use my name. All right, there you go. Well, pretty sure if you're following this channel still or following along right now, you know what it was. You know what it was. It wasn't a cougar. Kind of weird. What's up with the growl, right? A solo lady hiking on a trail, absolutely innocent, not killing something, not hunting, possibly taking your food you're jealous of, not taking your berry crop, not packing a camera, trying to get a picture of you, not knocking on a tree, not being annoying or dumb, and you gotta go scare the shit out of her. Odd, right? But anyway, there you go. Voice is heard. Voice is heard. Now, yeah, cougars, they're dirtbags. Cougars are dirtbags. Absolute dirtbags. Absolute opportunists. And very, very, very good at what they do. Cougars have eyes. You know, when, all you cat owners, you know when you got a cat and you're, all of a sudden it'll just fire up and it'll see an ant on the carpet way across the room. Focus on it and the tail starts flicking. You know what I mean? It's so hard to see a wild cat first. It's so hard. They are so in tune. It's stupid. But anyway, babbling. Share my story at howtohunt.com. Get it up your chest, give me the knowledge. Get it shared, no matter what. Share my story at howtohunt.com. Also, there will be a bunch of you are going to be getting a held of from Sarah. I don't know what email she's going to use. I don't know. And the fishing thing, I reminded that today. Somebody got a hold of me, wanted to go fishing. So I told them to email Sarah as fast as you can and book it at howtohunt.com and get in line. And then we'll get a bunch of you out on the boat in summer too. All right? Now, I got to go find her. She got bit by an ant today. Got a little bit of a hot spot on her arm. And it's kind of funny at the same time. I was sitting there on the chair beside her and the sun, my kind of knees are up and I'm going through my emails. And all of a sudden I looked and on my knee is a spider. Not a big one. But I went like this. I went, huh? Like that, right? And there's a woman on the other side of her and a man. And she's like, oh my God, right? So I'm slowly going like this with my finger up to it to flick it off my knee. And I'm going like this. The thing jumps off my knee and jumps onto my hand. Of course, I'm like, whoa! And then Sarah shoots up in the air, probably 12 feet, and then landed on the deck, and I smacked with my hat and squished the bastard. Then the poor woman beside us lost her shit. Doesn't speak English, and they had to pack up their shit and leave. Pretty funny. Pretty funny. That's about it. Not much new news. It's getting fit, getting healthy. Reset, ready to go tackle another crazy ass frickin' year at home. Lots coming up. See you tomorrow, hopefully.